Hey everyone, my name is Valor, and this is going to be a guide video, the first in a series about tuning your UI to improve your performance in raiding. Today is going to be the first episode, and the focus of the episode is going to be how to properly use nameplates to be a better DPS in raids. The video will apply somewhat to a lesser degree to tanks and healers, but I'm coming from the DPS perspective, and definitely the modifications that I'll be showing today are focused on improving your play as a DPS. So before we get into the details of what I do with my nameplates and my UI, I'm just going to show you an example on the screen. This is from the Mythic Iron Reaver fight in Hellfire Citadel. And what you're seeing is that the boss drops a number of types of bombs on the ground during Phase 2, which is called the air phase. And some of these bombs are very high priority, such as the quick fuse firebomb, which needs to be destroyed very fast before it blows up and potentially wipes the raid. Other ones are not so important, such as the reinforced firebomb. That one you do need to destroy, but it has a much longer timer, so it's not a high priority. And then there is the reactive firebomb, which from a DPS perspective, at least in our strategy, is not a priority at all, because that bomb can only be destroyed by jumping on it, by right-clicking on it, and that's a job that in our guild we've reserved for tanks. So on my screen, what you see me do is that I minimize the importance of that frame. I have it so that the nameplate for that type of bomb is very small, not very noticeable, so that I'm not distracted by it. I want to see the targets that I need to be focused on, and that's why you see, for instance, the quick fuse and the burning firebomb. They are very big, very noticeable. They have icons. They're customized so that I see them quick, and so yeah, that's the general idea of what I want to do with my nameplates. So one disclaimer before moving forward, this is not going to be a video about my general UI. I've gotten a fair number of requests for that, and I am still planning a video on that. It's a tricky thing because my UI is always evolving. It's certainly not perfect as is, and I'm always looking for ways to improve it. But I am still planning a video where I kind of go through showing how I do it. I will say, for anyone curious, I mean, it's not LVUI or any kind of preset or anything. This is just a lot of very generic popular add-ons that have been customized to look a certain way. So, my action bars, it's just dominoes, and I just have them, I move the bars up closer to the middle of the screen, and I make the icons bigger, and then, these unit frames down here, those are just shadowed unit frames, and then of course weak auras for like my focus bar and stuff. So it's nothing too crazy, it's just, basic add-ons that have been heavily customized to look a certain way. So, if we focus on the nameplates, we go in, the first thing that you'll want to do is you're going to want to find what add-on you want to use. Now, this video is going to focus on the Tidyplates add-on, which is a sub-add-on of Tidyplates, which is very popular and I think most people use. The big exception being people who use LVUI. Obviously that has its own plates in it, and I can't speak to how to customize those or if it's even possible to customize those to the degree that I'm going to be showing in this video. So yeah, but if you want to download that, you can just go onto Curse, download Tidyplates, and then download the Tidyplates add-on. And then once you are in game, you type in /Tidyplates, or I'm sorry, /Tidyplates, and you get the kind of basic UI thing. And the only thing that matters here, if you're going to use Tidyplates the way I do, is you want to make sure that the theme for your two specs that you have is actually set to Tidyplates. So you can see right now I have it on these target dummies here. If I were to switch this to, the neon theme, it changes, and then all the settings that I'm going to show later in the video, they won't do anything. So you want to make sure you have it set to Tidyplates for those. And then you want to click OK, and then either go to Tidyplates, so you can go through here and open the config there, or you can just type in /TP. And so here we're in the general Tidyplates settings. The first tab is Nameplate Settings, and this is where you're going to set up just how the generic nameplate looks on an enemy that hasn't been customized. And that'll be the last thing we talk about in the video, is how to make them actually customized for certain mobs. So, in the first tab here, this is just the general Blizzard settings. There's really not much you should have to put on here at all. Health bar, this is the first big customization. Here you can change the color, or not the color, but the style of the bar. So like, I'm using the Tidyplates bar style, which is a very bright color, solid color bar. If you wanted something crazy, you could choose one of these ones that looks all weird. I don't think that's effective, but it's whatever you find best. There's minimalist, which I think a lot of people would like. I like the Tidyplates one just because it's a very bright color and I find it more noticeable. You can show the border. I definitely recommend that. I feel like the bars stand out more when they have that little bolded outline around them. You can show an elite border if you want, but this video is focused on rating, so I'm not really worried about seeing elites versus non-elites like out in the world. Placement is important because, sometimes I'm playing and I feel like my bars are a little bit too high up. It's not showing right now on these target dummies, but you can change where the nameplates go. If you want them lower relative to their target, you can change that. I like to leave it at the default because it changes a lot depending on how big the enemy is. Like really small enemies, the nameplate might start appearing like below them, and it's going to look kind of weird. So I definitely recommend just keeping it at the default, but you do have that option. You can color HP by amount. What this is going to do is it's not going to switch the color instantaneously the moment it hits a threshold. It's going to, over time, gradient down into this other color. So like when these enemies are like half health, it's going to be kind of an orange because I have it, high as yellow and low as red. I actually don't like this. This is one thing that I don't like about threat plates. I would prefer an instant switch at a threshold, like for me as a marksman hunter at 35% when I can use executes. I would like it to just switch to red right then. I haven't found a way to do that with threat plates. I know that like with the generic Tidyplates you can, but I'm just kind of dealing with that because threat plates has other things that Tidyplates doesn't that I prefer more. So that's the one downside. You can show a threat glow. I don't do that because, again, in raiding, I'm never going to have threat really. Maybe if you're a tank, that's something that you can explore, and it's just going to add some customization to the frames based on whether or not you have threat. And definitely enable the raid marked HP colors. At least I like to do that. That way, when you mark them with a certain, let's say I make that a skull, it's going to turn that to whatever color I have set for that marker. You don't have to do that, because again, if you mark it, you will see the icon above, and maybe that's enough for you. But I do like having the color of the bar change when it has the mark. Cast bar, I like to enable that. I can't show it on the target dummy, but I might have a clip on the screen right now that shows it in raid if I can find one. But basically, it'll just show a cast bar when enemies casting something, and you can change the placement of that. You can change again the theme of it, threat plates or minimalist or whatever you like, and then you can change the coloring. I like to put, for instance, like white on uninterruptible. For me, I just associate that color with like, oh, that's a cast that I don't need to worry about, and if I'm capable of interrupting, I choose some other, whatever color you want. Now, so alpha, this is just how like faded in or faded out. That's like the opacity of the bars. So the first setting here is the non-target alpha. So you'll see, I like it mostly high, but you'll see here, like the one that I'm targeting, the other one is actually a little bit faded out, like almost a little translucent. So if I were to like move this down a lot, like I put it down to minus 94%, and now you can barely see that other frame because I'm not targeting it. And when I target it, it comes into view. So the downsides here, obviously the lower this is, the more emphasized your target's going to be, but at the same time, usually you're having to watch multiple multiple frames, even the ones you're not actually targeting. So I like to keep it up somewhere around minus 20%. There's an argument to be made that it should be a little bit lower, maybe like minus 30, but that's, definitely play around with that and see whatever you like. You can custom target alpha. The default, I believe, is just 100, so I don't bother checking it. And then there's marked unit alpha. So if something is marked with the square, you could make it so that it has a certain alpha setting. Again, I prefer to just leave it as is, no particular reason to change it. Go to scale, and this is one that you may very well want to change compared to mine. I do have it set at the maximum allowable scale at 130 for my default frames. It's something that I'm reconsidering because of the custom nameplates, which is a feature that I'll be talking about later in the video. And given that you can make custom nameplates for enemies that are serious priority targets, there isn't really necessarily a need to have every nameplate on your screen be as large as I have them right now. So definitely adjust that to whatever you want. And this one just changes the scale. Like if you have nothing targeted, I haven't found a reason to do that personally. And then you can change the scale for all these like boss and elite and normal. Again, I don't change any of that. So then we go to name text, and this is just going to change the appearance of the name above your bar. I've just chosen options that I find to be the most noticeable. So, like you can make it a thick outline if you want. I actually used that for a while, and I decided that just normal outline was better. Again, if you set up proper custom nameplates, it's not going to be as important. You won't be needing to like look at the names of the bars as much, but there are situations like on Mythic Gore Fiend in Hellfire Citadel, which I'll be showing later, where you're targeting them, and you really do need to see the name. You can't have a custom nameplate for everything. So, choose whatever font and outline and font size that you find is most noticeable for you. You can change the width if you want like it to go out really far, and it'll show longer names. Like Dungeoneer's Training Dummy is actually a very long name, but if I were to change it to like 50, it's only going to show the first few numbers, first few letters of the name. So I usually go with around 150 or so. I feel like that's a reasonable amount. And then you can change the height as well. That's right. And then again, the placement. Again, this is just going to change where it is. I actually have it up a little bit. You can change where the name's going. For some reason, you wanted it below the health bars, you could do that. I just have it right up here at 12, just showing right above the bar. And then obviously you have them centered. The health text, that's just going to show that percentage there. You can actually show the amount as well. Personally, I'll just look at the amount down in my unit frames down at the bottom. I don't really want to see all that clutter of numbers, so I leave that off, and I like to show just the percentage, which you can show here, the percent text box. Make sure you enable it, text at full HP. I like to see the 100% personally. You could turn that off, and that way it's only going to show it once it starts taking some damage. Again, font outline, I use the same font for everything, Vixar. I choose the outline, though you could do like a thick outline, or you could just do none if you prefer. I feel like that's a little hard to read, but I feel like outline's a good balance there, it makes it easy to read. Change your font size, same width and height, just showing how much. Haven't felt a need to change this because it's only showing a percentage, so you could put that width really low, and it's really not going to, it only makes a difference like right at the very bottom. Like pretty much any width, it's going to show the 100%, and then the height. And the placement, I leave everything, I like it right in the middle there, but of course, for some reason you wanted it, off on like maybe the right side of the bar, you could put it like over here, and like, maybe you find that more effective. So I'm gonna reset that to 0. Spell text, this is going to show, I believe this is the spell in the cast bar. I believe that's what that is. I haven't changed these settings much at all. But yeah, I believe that's when you see the cast bar below, it'll actually show the name of the spell they're casting. I think it's useful to leave it on, of course, but you could turn that off if you feel like it's too much text clutter on your screen. I take off the level. Again, I can look down here in my unit frame for that. That's when you're rating, you don't need to see the level. You kind of know the level of everything in there. I actually have the elite icon on right now, but I'm actually going to take that off. There's really not a reason to have that. The skull icon on nameplates. Truth be told, I'm actually not sure what that is. I'm actually going to turn that off for now. Whatever it is, it's obviously not that important. Spell icon, that's going to be that should be the icon of the cast bar, I believe. I just leave it on, haven't changed any settings there. And then lastly, raid marks. There is a setting that's important to change here because of the custom nameplates that you'll see later, and that is the placement of the raid marker. So in the video that you're going to be seeing, I'll show some video here of Hellfire Assault. I have custom icons that show above certain enemies, like on the Gorebound Fellcasters, and I have like a kind of fell, like fireball, something icon above their head. And what's going on is that icon's actually covering up the mark. Like if I mark it an X or a skull, it's covering it up, and that it was a problem in my raid last night, so I've since fixed it. And then basically the way you fix it is that you change the placement of the marker here. So you can leave it like, I have it like around like 35 or 36, whatever, and then change the X value so it goes off to the side here. But you could do it any other way. You could make it so it's centrally aligned, and you could make it so it goes up pretty high. But I feel like it's much more intuitive to have it right above the bar and then just off on the side a little bit. And then one other thing to note before we go to the custom nameplates is you'll see when I'm targeting an enemy, it's showing these arrows that point inward at the bar. It's a feature I've added recently, and I find that it helps a lot, because when I'm in the middle of a fight and there are like 10 nameplates on my screen, I feel like it can be very difficult to actually see on the plates which one I'm targeting. And I don't want to turn down the alpha value of my non-target so much that it becomes really visible, and now I have trouble seeing the other ones. So this, I feel like, is a good compromise. At least it's worked well for me. If you go to widgets and target highlight, enable that, and you can choose one of these highlights. So like this one's bubble, crescent, and then the default, it actually just highlights the frame a little bit. And for me, I find the inward pointing arrows to be like really intuitive, because it's like it's pointing at the target. And then you can change the color of these. I'm colorblind, so I have different sensitivities than everyone else. For me, yellow is like probably the most noticeable color on the screen, so I always like having the yellow arrows, but maybe you want them white, maybe you want them red. Choose whatever you find to be the most noticeable in RAID. And then, so that brings us to the final part, and probably the most important part, which are the custom nameplates. And what these are is, these change the nameplate settings for a particular enemy. So here, if I wanted, let me take off that marker there, and if I wanted, let's say I'm in a raid and Dungeoneer's Training Dummy was a high priority target, right? They came out and they needed to be killed right away. It's very important that they die, and I care more about them than other targets. I want to use a custom nameplate for them to make them more noticeable. So the way we're going to do that is, if you have the thing targeted, you could just, you go over to custom nameplates, go to one of the empty settings, or these are all default ones actually, like the first 40 or so, the first 35. You can just overwrite these. I haven't done that yet. I'm just going down to the empty slots here on the side. So just, go to like an empty one, and you could like use, click here, use target's name, and it's going to put these settings that I've already got set down here, which I'll show you how to do. More realistically, you're going to be out of raid and putting in a raid target. So like here I had, Gorebound Construct, right? So you just type in the name. Let's say I wanted it on Archimond himself. Not that I would, but I just put in his name, click OK, and now Archimond's going to have, any mob named Archimond is going to have that special frame. So we clear it. I will use the Dungeoneer's Training Dummy for now as an example. We're going to use custom settings, obviously. Show the nameplate. The custom alpha, I just have it at 100, just like anything else. I mean, and the nice thing about this is that even when you're not targeting them, it should be at 100 alpha. I'm actually seeing a little bit of a fade here, so I'm actually surprised that it does look like my target is still a little bit like fuller opacity, but I don't disable it. Custom scale, again, I just have 140%, so if I were to clear that, you'll see they actually get a little bit smaller. I think they do anyway. Yeah, I think it increased a little bit, because remember the maximum on the nameplates is 130, and here the custom scale is 140, so it's just a small 10% increase. This is a big one. Allow marked HP coloring. This is a personal preference, so like if I mark this as the square, it's going to change the custom color that I set below to this, blue color. You may not actually want that. Again, like I said earlier in the video, you may just find the icon to be enough and you don't want that. I really find it very intuitive and awesome that the bar itself changes color. But you could uncheck that, and now you can see it's still marked square, but the bar stays the same as whatever you set it here. And here we're obviously going to check enable custom colors. If you don't check that, it'll just use the default color, whatever you choose, back under nameplate settings and health bar for like here, like the high color, if you color HP by amount. But I'm going to use enable custom colors, and maybe I want this to be like a pinkish purplish color, right? And then now that's assuming that something isn't marked, that'll be the default color. Maybe if it's like a skeleton mod, like in Gorfine that you're going to see in a minute, because skeletons are white, white is more intuitive, so I use that. And then the big one is putting an icon above the bars. So if this is not enabled, this is just obviously the way they'll look. They'll just come out with the thing. I feel like for really priority targets or in fights where there's a lot of targets, it helps a lot to have this icon above their head. The way you're going to set this, you're going to click enable. This is going to be empty by default, so it'll just look like this. And it's going to tell you to type in the texture path or the spell ID. I think the spell ID is way easier, so what I recommend you do is, like, let's say I'm in Gorfine and I want the the Gorebound constructs, which are skeletons. I'm going to go to Wowhead, and I'm going to type in skeleton. And then I'm going to go here to look for like an ability, something that has a spell ID. So I'll go to like uncategorized spells, because there's a ton of these. And here's one. I like this icon, skeleton costume. So I just go here, and the spell ID is actually right in the URL here. It'll just say spell equals, and then whatever that number is, that's the ID. Highlight that, copy it, go back in game, and then paste it right in there. Click OK, and now any targets that have this name that you put in up top, they're going to have the custom color and the icon above their head. So now, on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and show a sequence of a few fights that shows how it works. First, again, this is Hellfire Assault. And there's a couple priority targets in this fight. One are the hulking berserkers. They do a lot of tank damage if you leave them up too long, so they're usually one of the top priorities if there's no siege engines up. And another important ones are the fellcasters, which are actually not that high priority when they're alive, when they're up at high health, but when they get lower, they use Metamorphosis and turn into a Gorebound Terror, and they're actually an extremely powerful enemy that, you know, AoEs down the whole raid, and they need to be killed quick. In the video, I did not actually have a custom setting for the Terror, because I was looking on Warcraft logs, and I didn't actually think that the ID of the enemy changed, but it turns out that it did, so to fix that, you know, for next time I do the fight, I'm just going to go in and add a new setting here for Gorebound Terror, and maybe I'll change the icon or just make it more noticeable somehow. And then, you know, that's pretty much all I do in that fight. One option that I could have done were like the Iron Dragoons. They're really not an important enemy in the fight. I mean, they're great if you want to pad your AoE numbers, but they're not a dangerous enemy at all. They are absolute dead last priority. So for them, I might actually make a custom nameplate for them and make it smaller, so that their nameplate is not visible, not extremely visible, and it's not cluttering my screen too much. The next example is on Iron Reaver, some of which I've already shown. And as I explained before, certain bombs that pop out in that fight, they are very high priority, like the quick fuse firebomb. So that's going to have a custom nameplate, big icon, you know, a bomb icon above it. The burning ones are also burning firebombs. They're pretty high priority too, right after the quick fuse. So I've got like a fire icon above them. And then again, the reinforced, I just leave them normal. And the reactive ones, which tanks deal with, I make it very small, a blue color, just, you know, because I kind of like associate blue with like a passive color, and I just leave it out of the way so I don't target it. And then the last example I want to show is in Mythic Warfiend. This is a great example because in this fight, players are constantly dying, and they're leaving spirits behind with their name, and those spirits have nameplates, as you can see over by the boss. And at the same time, enemies are periodically spawning throughout the fight once they've exited the stomach, Warfiend's stomach, and they're up top, and they are the priority targets, right? So most of the DPS in the raid, they don't care about the people's spirits near the boss. They just want to focus on these Gorebound adds, right? If it's like a Gorebound Construct or a Gorebound Essence. So what I've done is I've set up custom nameplates for all three of these. So for instance, the Gorebound Construct is a skeleton. It is a very high priority target because if it reaches someone, it will kill them. So I have them with a white nameplate and the skeleton icon, you know, very noticeable. The top priority for me as a ranged DPS, as a hunter in this fight, are the Gorebound Essences. So them I have with kind of like a purple, pinkish nameplate, and then I have a Shadow Bolt icon above their head because they cast a chain Shadow Bolt. So for me, that's like an intuitive icon. When I see that, I'm like, oh, that's the one who casts the Shadow Bolt. I need to get him quick. And then lastly, for the Gorebound Spirit, which is like the big berserker guy, he's the tank ad. I just have a red health bar for him. I don't actually have a custom icon because there's only ever going to be one of those up top. And for me, the color is enough. I don't need another icon on my screen. I don't need to clutter it. I mean, there's some argument that I've already cluttered the screen too much. But, so yeah, I leave that out. And then one thing important to note is that, you know, I have the size of my health bar is pretty large. And again, that's really from before I was using these custom nameplates. Given that they're custom now, you know, you could, like if you're looking at the footage on the screen right now and you're thinking, wow, that is way too much on the screen, that's way too cluttered, I cannot have all that. You know, keep in mind that you can use all these features and just tone it down by making all the nameplates a little bit smaller. So that's an important customization that you may want to take into account. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to show in this video. I was really excited when I found the custom nameplate feature. I feel like it's a little bit revolutionized my ability to target priority ads in fights where they have all these ads coming out, and you know, some of them you really need to kill quick, and other ones you want to leave alone, or they're just not as important. So, you know, so I hope, you know, hopefully you watch this and, you know, maybe you didn't know about this feature, now you do. I really do hope it helps. If you enjoyed the video or did like it, you know, please leave a like and subscribe. And hopefully I'll have more episodes in the series out soon for other tweaks to the UI that can help you out in raiding. And then, as I said before, I will also have a general UI video sometime in the future in addition to our boss kill footages. Alright? Thanks so much, everyone.